Welcome to a very special, I don't know what we're calling this, emergency pod, maybe? We'll go with emergency pod. It is the end of roster cutdowns. We are here to break down everything that happened with roster cutdowns, everything that happened with building up the practice squad. It is a mini bite podcast preview slash post view slash bonus episode. My name is Jeremy Reisman. I am the producer of Pride of Detroit. You can find me at Detroit Online. With me to help break this down in almost first bite-ish fashion is the senior editor of Pride of Detroit, is at Ryan_POD, is Ryan Matthews. How we doing, buddy?
Are we going to call it a nibble?
Ooh.
Can we call it a nibble?
A little nibble? A little pod nibble?
I don't like how that sounds. Never mind. Dump it. Trash it.
You know what? Yeah, if we're going to make this a short episode, we should probably do away with whatever this conversation is and just get into it. The Lions have established their 53-man roster, which actually now again sits at 52 as of this exact moment, as it did when they initially cut down. Then it was back up to 53. We'll get to all the reasons why that. Their 16-man roster, which is also at 15 instead of 16 right now. Again, we're going to break it all down. We're going to go position by position, talk about what surprised us, what we nailed, what might happen in the future, what it means for the season, all that sort of stuff. And we might as well start with what I considered one of the bigger surprises of the week, and that is at quarterback, where the Lions decided to keep Jared Goff and Hendon Hooker. Not a surprise there. What was a surprise was Nate Sudfeld did not only not make the 53-man roster, but he did not return on the practice squad. However, Jake Fromm in his 8 preseason passes did make it back to the practice squad. So, A, Ryan, how surprised are you by all of that? And B, do you like it? Do you dig it?
I'm coming to terms with it because I didn't think it was on the table whatsoever, right? Jake Fromm came to Detroit because Hendon Hooker had a concussion. And then Hendon Hooker recovered from his concussion a lot faster than any of us had anticipated, and not just us, but even the Lions themselves. Right. I don't think they bring in Jake Fromm if they know that Hendon Hooker is going to progress and be ready for the Kansas City Chiefs game, but lo and behold, he was, and now Jake Fromm's on the practice squad and Nate Sudfeld is not in Detroit. I think I'm most shocked by that when it comes to maybe anything that happened on the roster, because, again, this guy hardly seemed like he was going to be here for the proverbial cup of coffee.
Yeah.
He's hanging around. He's in the coffee shop, Jeremy.
He's not just in the room.
That's right. That's right.
We assumed he was just in the room, but he was very much not just in the room.
Yeah, but he's here now, right? And I think, from what I heard from Brad Holmes, this is a guy that he had his eye on and that he recognized as somebody that, in case of emergency, break the glass, bring in Jake Fromm. And how are you feeling about Jake Fromm? Well, I mean, I know the dust has settled, and I think it's a more important conversation to take into account what Brad said today about Hendon Hooker and his development over the course of training camp and over the preseason. How are you feeling about the quarterback position from a macro level?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have some explaining to do. Maybe a little mea culping to do, because listen, I tend to take Dan Campbell at his word to an extreme because he's a very upright and honest guy. And the Tuesday, I think it was before the last preseason game, he's like, yeah, I'm probably going to keep 3 quarterbacks. I'm not going to say that 100%, but I probably am. And Nate Sudfeld's ahead and all that, and I think maybe I took that and I took it like I over exaggerated and over explained and maybe over justified that position, because to be quite honest, Ryan, I think I've been consistent all preseason. As much as I thought Nate Sudfeld was going to be the backup to start the year, I was still 100% behind cutting him and putting him on the practice squad. That's what I wanted. I wanted the Lions to only keep 2 quarterbacks, and they did. So that part is good. But I think I just took Dan Campbell a little bit too strictly at his word and didn't allow the opportunity, one, for Hendon Hooker to win the backup job outright based on his progression through the entire preseason, particularly how he finished it. And I certainly didn't really give a lot of credence to the fact that Jake Fromm would make the practice squad over Nate Sudfeld. I thought there was a chance to keep both on the practice squad. And so I'm left feeling okay. I'm not going to wring my hands about the backup position. The thing that I just find most surprising about it all is that the Lions don't really have what a lot of quarterbacks say they really value, which is like that quarterback on the sidelines that provides them an extra pair of eyes that can, go over the game plan beforehand and after and kind of just be that extra veteran voice in their ear. I don't know how necessary that is. Maybe Jake Fromm is that guy. Let's not discount them. I mean, obviously he doesn't know all the nuances of the offense yet, but he's been around since 2020, I think. So this is his fifth year, whatever that is. But it's a little surprising. To me, it represents a little bit of a change in strategy because usually they like to have that veteran guy around.
Sure. And maybe we underestimated just the kind of steps and the progression and the development of Hendon Hooker over the course of the preseason.
Sure.
I think we may have underestimated that a little bit. I feel like I have kind of been higher on Hendon Hooker, and from all the way back to draft season, this is somebody that I was not really interested in as far as a quarterback from a draft prospect standpoint. But I think to your point about having the extra set of eyes, the veteran presence, somebody who knows the playbook. Yes, I mean, logistically speaking, Hendon Hooker struggled a little bit with, getting the play call in and breaking the huddle and things like that. I'm just going to say the guy has been here a whole year, right? He's been in the room. He's been studying things and now he's back. Maybe we're kind of overestimating that aspect of having that guy in the room because Ben Johnson is still here. Jared Goff is still the guy. Nate Sudfeld, I think, was expendable, and we learned that in a hurry.
Yeah. And at the very least, he brings a new dimension, right? If you have to throw Hendon Hooker out there, he might not run the offense the same way. He might not have the same strength that Jared Goff has, but he brings a little extra added element with his feet. And it seems like maybe the week that he learned to slide maybe only lasted 1 week, and maybe we got to go back to the drawing board on that one. But it was fun to see him out there on Saturday to close out the preseason. 90 some rushing yards, and a couple of scoring drives after the Steelers starters were gone. But still, he improved throughout the preseason. He looked a lot more comfortable in the pocket, and yeah, I'm not sweating it. I'm totally happy with what they have. It's just a little bit of a change from what they normally do, which is fine.
Yeah, and from that standpoint, you've come a long way.
Sure, in that I'm willing to talk about the backup quarterback battle this long.
Yes, yeah, but that's okay because now when we get to running back, we don't have very much to talk about.
No,
I don't think.
In fact, we can basically skip over it. Jameer Gibbs, David Montgomery, Craig Reynolds, Sione Vaki make the team. I'm glad to see that Jamar Jefferson makes it back on the practice squad, but that pretty much played out as we expected. So unless you have anything to say about that group, I think we can move on to tight ends.
Just kind of a bummer to see Bam leave, just because he was here, somebody they clearly trusted until he had that shoulder injury in the regular season.
True.
Right? And best wishes and best of luck to him because he should stick around somewhere.
Yeah, I don't believe he's been picked up yet, but maybe he's just on the short call list at this point for the Lions in case the injury bug hits them again. All right, tight ends. This is another pretty big surprise for a lot of people, I would say, including myself. Sam Laporta, Brock Wright, and Parker Hesse make it. I had all three of those guys making the team, and it's funny kind of the way that the cuts played out. We first heard that Shane Zylstra was getting cut, and you were doing a little bit of a victory dance because you're like, I had James Mitchell in over Shane Zylstra, and then the cuts come down on the last day, and James Mitchell is on that list as well. Now they both come back on the practice squad, but I mean, I would say I'm relatively surprised by this development because as much as I had those first three in, Parker Hesse to me was always fullback 1, tight end 4, and special teamer. I thought given the strength of that room, or at least the perceived strength of that room, there was going to be a tight end 3 that came from either Zylstra or James Mitchell, but neither win that job.
Yeah, I think you put it right on the spot right there. With Hesse we thought was tight end 4. It was really James Mitchell versus Shane Zylstra for tight end 3, and lo and behold, they're on the practice squad, so they're still in the room, right? And I think I think that also speaks to the Lions and maybe just how they'll approach things week to week. I think there's always probably room for an elevation here or there. And it's nice that those guys, made their way back to the practice squad because I'm not ready to give up on James Mitchell yet. I don't, we've seen improvement from Shane Zylstra, but I think he's clearly just still not quite there. And also Parker Hesse, to your point, right? He proved the versatility. He proved, the growth and Dan Campbell talked about Parker Hesse as a standout player during the summer. So, pretty surprised. Not as surprised as Hendon Hooker is the backup quarterback and the Lions are keeping 2 on their roster. Yeah. Surprised, but a surprise nonetheless.
Yeah, and I would say my concern with this approach is simply that Parker Hesse doesn't strike me as the guy that can fill in for either of the starting roles, right? He could probably fill in for Brock Wright. Not sure if he could fill in for Sam Laporta. And not that a lot of players can, but I think that's why you were really looking at Shane Zylstra and James Mitchell is like those guys are a little bit closer to the hybrid model than I think Hesse is. But you have him on the practice squad, so they're available at some point. It's just kind of like that mid-game injury would leave them, I think, in a little bit of a pickle.
Big time.
All right, wide receivers. I don't think we were that surprised by them only keeping 4 in the 4 that they kept. Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, Khalif, and Isaiah Williams. Congratulations to him on an impressive end of the preseason that rightfully earned him a spot. I think what did come as a surprise as to what happened afterwards, maybe not a surprise, but the Lions kind of did what Brad Holmes occasionally does, which is like, all right, we have a clear weakness. Let's just throw everything at it. And so they don't put any roster claims in at the wide receiver position, but they go ahead and get Tim Patrick. He cleared waivers, or he didn't clear waivers. He was a veteran, so you didn't have to put in a claim for him. Same with Allen Robinson, who they get. They bring back Tom Kennedy. And then I think maybe the most surprising of all, they bring back Donovan Peoples-Jones on the practice squad. So I guess my question to you is, and you raised this question on Pride of Detroit today, like, who's going to win out that battle there, and how early are we going to see it?
I like you said, put the question out there, and I came to the answer that it's still Khalif Raymond. It's always been Khalif Raymond. It's the moon meme, right? It's always been Khalif Raymond, right? Who's been the wide receiver X. To what Brad Holmes talked about though during the press conference, though, I thought was pretty interesting was he thought it was Antoine Green. Yeah. He thought Antoine Green was on that trajectory, and then he gets injured, and that's super unfortunate. But maybe the Lions aren't quote unquote scrambling. The one thing I want to really reiterate and underline, bold, draw everybody's attention to is that I don't view this as desperation. I don't see the Lions going out and getting Allen Robinson and getting Tim Patrick, and they got a bunch of veteran wide receiver X's on the practice squad. I don't view that as desperation. I would view trading draft capital as being desperate, right? I don't see them, overspending to, correct the mistake that they quote unquote may have made with Josh Reynolds, which is again something that Brad Holmes talked about today, where he's like, well, I mean, we wanted Josh back and it just didn't work. So I'm really at this point where I'm not concerned. I don't really see any of these guys that are on the practice squad being somebody who, hey, week 1 against the Los Angeles Rams, they're trotting out. I really don't see it with Tim Patrick. I really don't see it with Allen Robinson. I don't see it with Tom Kennedy. The only guy who I think has an outside shot is Donovan Peoples-Jones. At the end of the day, though, I think they're going to go with the most talented guys, and Khalif Raymond is a guy who, and the reason I answered the question of the day the way I did is because he's just a guy they trust. Yeah. 2021, they leave training camp, and within a week, Tyrell Williams is out. Rashad Perriman didn't even make the team. Who do they turn to? They turn to Khalif Raymond, and he sticks there all year long, and then he's the punt returner, and they trust him when they need a gadget play. Khalif Raymond. When I think that there's so much trust in Khalif Raymond. That's something that I don't think we can ever maybe overestimate about this coaching staff and about this, front office is they trust their guys for sure. And I think Khalif Raymond is your wide receiver X until they feel comfortable about these other guys, Jeremy.
Yeah. And there's no doubt in my mind, if you're talking 3 wide, it's those top 3 guys, Amon-Ra, Jameson, and Khalif. I mean, it's clear though that they want a big bodied guy, right? And it might not even be necessarily a starting role. Like it could just be, let's bring this guy in the red zone. Let's bring this guy in, certain specific packages. I think they want that guy. And I think you might see someone play that role week 1. That to me is maybe the more interesting question, because I'm with you. I think those top 3 are locked in to the start of the season, and that only changes if one of these guys wows them on the practice squad during practice, which could very well happen. Like, we've heard a lot of really great things about Tim Patrick in the past 48 hours, and I really like the addition there, and I'm rooting for the guy because he also seems like just a really, really good dude. Seems like almost a clone of what they had in Josh Reynolds. And so, yeah, like I'm rooting for him. And listen, I like Allen Robinson a lot. I've not been afraid to say it. Brad Holmes even said a couple free agencies ago we wanted to get Allen Robinson, and it didn't work out. That also speaks to another really cool point that Brad Holmes was talking about today, in that he was like, yeah, free agency is way easier now. Agents are like, hey, do you guys want this guy? Do you guys want this guy? Whereas last couple of years, we really had to work to get some of these guys here. But I'm also with you that I think Donovan Peoples-Jones might be the week 1 call-up for that role, just because he knows the offense better. And that's what Brad said. Like, now it's just about getting these new guys in the room up to speed. But I really would not be surprised to see Tim Patrick in there as early as week 2. And I don't know if that necessarily means on the 53-man roster or one of those temporary call-ups from the practice squad, but they clearly want someone in that role. And now I think they have at least 2 guys that can play it, at least in a situational role. And that's what they want. That's what as Dan Campbell said late last week, like, it's not a position that we need, but please give me like all the options on the table. Like, I want a full arsenal. And so we've probably made a little bit more out of this entire battle than we should have the entire time. But at the same time, it's a weapon that they want in this offense, and they're going to utilize at some point.
Yeah. Well, it also sounds like we wouldn't be having this discussion if Antoine Green doesn't suffer a concussion.
True.
Right. So, yeah. And I guess just to speak to your point about the red zone real quick, maybe that's why we were a little bit surprised that Shane Zylstra or James Mitchell don't make the roster, because either of those guys could moonlight as red zone targets, and neither of those guys are there. And instead it's Parker Hesse. And when I think of Parker Hesse, I think of Corey Schlesinger. I don't think of,
Parker Hesse's going to catch a 1-yard touchdown this year.
They
go condensed goal line. He's in there in the fullback. He leaks out.
Naked boot, Jared Goff. It's going to happen. 100%. Yeah.
All right, let's move to the offensive line. Offensive tackle, not a surprise at all. You keep Decker, Sewell, Skipper, Sorsdal, and Manu. They did bring back Jamarco Jones on the practice squad, which is positive news because he missed the preseason finale with presumably an injury. But if they're bringing him back on the practice squad, he's probably feeling all right. Interior offensive line, I would say, is a little bit more surprising. Frank Ragnow, Graham Glasgow, Kevin Zeitler, Coyote Aushika. None of those are surprised, but they do. They keep Michael Neese, which we talked about a little bit last week as a possibility, simply because maybe that interior offensive line, the guard position, was a little bit weak, whereas they tried out Kingsley Iguakin at guard and it didn't go as well as him at center. So maybe that gives Neese the advantage over Iguakin. I think that's probably how that played out, but they bring back Iguakin on the practice squad.
Yeah. I'm just ready to see the unit. I'm ready to see the 5. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
That's it. Like, I'm just ready for that. And knock on wood, there's no issues.
All right. Let's move right to the defense then and talk about defensive end, which was a topic of hot conversation before the cuts. They keep Aiden, Marcus Davenport, Josh Paschal, James Houston. James Houston being not a surprise, but like I think almost a breath of fresh air for Lions fans. He's been one of the biggest debates over the past week where it's just like, is he washed? Can he only do one thing? Can he even do that one thing anymore? And their vote of confidence in him almost to me feels like, okay, I can relax. Like they know how to use him. As Brad Holmes said today, like he's been battling. He battled the ankle last year. He came in, maybe it was so-so in training camp, got a little bit better, had the setback with the bone bruise on his knees, but came back and had a really strong finish to the preseason. And maybe that's what eventually won him the spot. Unfortunately for Isaac Ukwu and Mitchell Agude, that means they didn't win a spot, but they also come back on the practice squad.
Which is exciting. I think both of those guys were really gaining a lot of traction. Maybe more so it had to do with playing the numbers game where it was, well, if James Houston doesn't make the roster, we really want to see one of these two guys. And a lot of people were kind of, this guy or that guy. I'm glad both of them are back for sure. I think the IR to return with Broderick Martin, it I won't say that it makes me unnerved or uneasy, but it's just something where I want the guy on the field. Like I want him rotating in. Now, I don't think he was in line to have a big role, so to speak, but at the same time, I've seen this Lions team get by with Tyson Alualu and Benito Jones and you know what I mean? The rotating cast of characters. I'm cool with it. It's one of those young guys that you don't want to see missing time. It's the Levi Onwuzurike.
Yes, he needs reps.
Redux. So yeah, and John Kaminsky, like I guess we'll keep on running that meme into the ground. Nobody's talking about John Kaminsky, and then he comes back, and hopefully he's just a fresh guy who you know what he's capable of, right? And the Lions love him in terms of his ability to set the edge and play the close end role that they so utilize. Is there anybody here that you're wondering where do they fit in on the active roster when it comes to game day? Because to me, it's Mekhi Wingo.
Yeah. Because Levi's like exploded and took that job, and like I think he'll be Levi's replacement essentially. But at the same time, like there's a little bit of overlap there with Josh Pascal, so like I think Mekhi Wingo could very well be a game day inactive. If you're trying to count numbers, like Manu's probably one of those guys. Maybe Nice is one of those guys, depending on how healthy the offensive line is. I'm not going to go through them all, but yeah, I would say like he's not quite ready for game day action, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe the first month of the season just being a regular game day inactive.
Yeah, and hey, a Lee McNeil extension, it's at least bubbling.
It's bubbling.
It's like it's out there. It's around.
Yeah, and while you're talking, the Broderick Martin thing, like it's worth noting Pecco comes back on the practice squad. Maybe even by the time you're listening to this, he might be back on the 53. That's kind of what I'm expecting, where like there's that spot open currently on the 52. That would leave open a spot on the practice squad, or there already is one. I've already forgotten. I think there is already one. I don't remember.
Maybe question mark.
But either way, I expect CJ Moore, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, who was released from the practice squad today, to eventually come back to the practice squad. Oh, they needed a veteran spot on the practice squad. That's what it was.
That's right. Yeah.
And CJ Moore was the one who was released. So once they move Pecco up to the regular roster, that creates a veteran roster spot on the practice squad for CJ Moore to come back. But there is still an empty spot, and we're going to get to what I think they might use that spot on a little bit later. Linebacker, another pretty big surprise. I don't think it was that big of a surprise that they kept 6, with Ben Niemann being the guy that most people agreed was going to take that 6th spot. But the Lions go out there and get a waiver claim. Trevor Nowaski crawling back after being waived. He's now the linebacker 7, which I think that number alone is pretty shocking. But as Brad Holmes said today, they never wanted to lose Nowaski. He was a guy that, he was on their practice squad last year. They ended up signing him to the 53-man roster for a couple games. He made a couple game appearances. But when they wanted to bring C.J. Gardner-Johnson back and Lee McNeil back, and they had to do those like late season roster gymnastics, they had to waive Trevor Nowaski, and they were very much planning on bringing him back to the practice squad, but he goes out and gets claimed. Now he's back. Special teams is obviously his biggest forte. I don't really know what to say. Like, okay, great. It seems like maybe there's you have 3 special teams linebackers now. Maybe this is a sign of like their kickoff strategy. Is that how you read it?
Maybe. Yeah. I think that definitely comes into play. You think about Malcolm Rodriguez. We talked a little bit about like Parker Hesse, he seems like he's got the fullback role, because Malcolm, to me, 2 things though. Like we talk about the fullback thing and that was just kind of like a here and there thing. I think Malcolm is still a guy that they trust to come in and play defense.
Yeah.
They trust him to come in and still play defense. Jalen Reeves-Maybin, he's the first guy to be called, right? Like when they need somebody to come in and play defense, if they need it in a pinch.
Depends I think, but yes. Yeah.
Sure. I think either of those 2 guys, though, you feel comfortable with them on the field if things go sideways on game day. feel really good about that. Like the depth is linebacker the place that you feel maybe the most confident in terms of like not only the starters, but like there are
Yeah.
guys who can step in and it's not a bloodbath anymore, Jeremy. It's a utopia. It's
From
we've
bloodbath
realized,
to a utopia, the Lions
yeah,
linebacker room.
yeah, led by good old Shep.
Yeah.
And the one thing about Nowaski is it's just an awesome feel good story for a guy who the Lions didn't ever want to see leave.
Yeah.
Imagine being the guy who played at Saginaw Valley State, grew up in Michigan. You go out to Arizona, you probably think that you have a good shot of making the roster out there because Cardinals defense is not, exactly a hotbed of talent. But then you don't make the team, you don't make the practice squad in Arizona, and then all of a sudden your agent's like, "Hey, you want to go back home and play for the team with Super Bowl aspirations?" That's a pretty cool
That
story.
was probably a very short conversation.
Probably.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Hey, get on the plane.
Yeah.
Go.
It's interesting because I do wonder if the claiming of him caused the Lions not to bring back Ty Summers, because I know a lot of people were hoping he'd come back, but he gets claimed by the Giants, or not claimed by the Giants. He gets signed to their practice squad.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a guy I think a lot of people expected maybe to come back on the practice squad. Lions don't have a linebacker on their practice squad, but when you have 7 of them, why would you need one?
Exactly.
All right, let's go into the secondary. Cornerback, again, not that surprising of a position. Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, Amik Robertson.
That's a
Ennis
cool player.
Khalil Dorsey, and Kindle Vildor. Maybe he was kind of the bubble guy that we weren't sure about. I'll make the team. No one on the practice squad at corner, which again is maybe a little bit surprising. Like maybe thought they'd give Stephen Gilmore another year to develop. But let's move to safety too. We'll lump them in. Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Ifatu Melifonwu, not placed on IR yet, which I think is certainly notable. Brandon Joseph, and then Lauren Strickland is kind of the biggest surprise there, making the roster. But again, he was someone that we had mentioned was possible.
You mentioned, so you can pat your back. You can run your little victory lap. It's cool.
He wasn't on my 53, so I don't know how much I can really like. That's me in my hedging. I was like, let me just cover all my bases, so I'm always right.
Yeah. Let me hedge on the podcast. Forget the written word.
That's right. But no, I mean, I think the reason why Strickland always made sense is, one, he can play nickel, and the Lions, we're not really sure what Amik Robertson's situation is at. We assume he's going to play, but if not, they have a backup to the backup because Branch is probably the backup nickel. He can play a lot of special teams. He can play safety. It's makes a lot of sense, and he's just like that physical, hard-hitting dude that we know this team loves. Anything else about the secondary that surprised you or was interesting to you?
The Lauren Strickland thing I think was interesting because that was something that I think everybody earmarked as CJ Moore's spots. Like, a safety, big special teamer, love the special teams, can't get enough of special teams. It's going to be CJ Moore. But it was a mix of things happening, right? It was Brandon Joseph's ascension and we want that guy, as depth on defense.
Yep.
And then Lauren Strickland, had a great showing in training camp and in the preseason games, especially. So I feel pretty good about the safety spot, but I think the iffy thing is an interesting thing you bring up, like not on IR. Where are we at here again? But this is a thing with iffy that, yes, when he plays and he's available, that stretch of games was incredible. How much can you trust the guy where the greatest ability is a question mark sometimes, right? And how does that room look, right? It's like you have Kirby. You think of him as a surefire starter. You want him out there a lot. You want him playing free safety. You have Brian Branch who can, do everything, I guess. Another guy who dealt with some injuries, right? Like
Sure.
there's some Kirby Joseph injuries. I won't even say oft injured. I'll just say that I have some mild concerns about durability, but that's why you keep a guy like Brandon Joseph, right? And the cornerback room, I'm really interested to see how they deploy these guys. Like, Carlton Davis outside, Terrion Arnold outside, Amik Robertson in the slot. In case of emergency, what happens? Like, if they need an outside corner, are they like, well, you know what? We saw enough from Kindle Vildor to feel like we'll put Kindle Vildor out there if we don't feel like Ennis is quite there yet. And that might be something that fans go, oh man, like second round pick. Why isn't, and it just might be a, hold on. Like
Yeah.
we know what Kindle can do on game day. Um, so that's my only takeaway. And I'm hopeful. Again, another guy you're rooting for is Emmanuel Mosley. Like
Right.
if Emmanuel Mosley can come back, it's just awesome depth to have. But is there anything that you are like looking at the, because you lump them in with attention, like the safety, the cornerback room, you're looking at all the defensive backs. Is there a spot where you're like, I'm worried, or is there a spot where you're like, I feel really good about this?
I feel pretty damn good about their outside corner situation. Like to me,
Okay.
you mentioned that who's the first one that comes in? That's a great question because I think they have a lot of great options. I think it could be Rakestraw. Rakestraw could be the backup nickel. I mean, I thought Vildor and Dorsey looked excellent as kind of
Oh
your
yeah.
starting corners for most of the preseason. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of depth there, and it's an oft injured position. And yes, we're assuming that Kindle Vildor plays better than he did down the stretch. Yes, we're assuming Khalil Dorsey plays better than when he got benched for Kindle Vildor. But they have played better, and Ennis is
Yeah.
in that room too. So I feel good about that. My biggest concern is just the fact that these guys haven't played together at all. I think I've mentioned it a couple times. Like either Kirby's been injured, or Brian's been injured, or Iffy's been injured, or Carlton's been injured, or Terrion's been injured. Like Amika's been injured. All of those like starting groups have been injured at some point in training camp, and it just feels like we haven't seen those starting five guys out there all together for much, if maybe not ever in the preseason. So that's a little concerning. We'll see how the chemistry is in week one, but it seems like they're all pretty much back out on the field now. They got a week and a half here to get ready. We'll see how it plays out.
A position, I mean, the defensive backs, a place where you need more communication more than maybe anywhere.
Sure.
Yeah,
Especially when you're at home, 3 of your first 4 games, and the crowd is going to be very, very loud out there.
yeah, for sure. And again, think about where we were a year ago, or think about when the Lions entered the offseason and it was like, what do they need to do? The defensive backs, right? They just need to get that figured out. And Brad Holmes has thrown everything
Yep.
at the wall, and hopefully some of it sticks. I'm encouraged.
Yeah.
I'm even more hopeful than I was a year ago.
Yeah, no question. All right. Special teams. Jake Bates sticks around as a kicker. Jack Fox is immortal. Hogan Hatton beats Scott Daly for the long snapper job, and then Scott Daly says, "Screw you guys, I'm going to Chicago," where they needed a long snapper because theirs got injured. What is that?
It's Caleb Williams. He does the bear down thing.
I don't know how much you want to talk about Hogan Hatton. The thing I kind of wanted to bring up real quick, because listen, I've been labeled as a Jake Bates hater. I don't think I am a Jake Bates hater. I will say I'm maybe a Jake Bates alarmist. I'm not feeling great about him entering the regular season as the lone kicker. But Brad Holmes did say we're probably going to add a veteran kicker on the practice squad just to be there, probably to help him a little bit in a way to help him develop. Because I think there's room for a young kicker. We don't really talk about the kicker position ever as one to develop, but you don't have a lot of kickers on your team that did not kick field goals in college or high school. So he's a unique situation, and I'm willing to be patient there. Brad Holmes, I wrote an article today about what Brad Holmes said, and that he's wired right, and so they're encouraged by the fact that he doesn't get the yips. It doesn't stick with him when he makes a miss. So sure, that's good, but also maybe stop missing too. That would make me feel a little bit better.
That would always make everything feel better, right? Like, hey, Jared Goff, don't miss a pass. Just
Right.
like complete them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Jake Bates thing. I think saying that you're a Jake Bates alarmist is something that you should always maybe put it in your Twitter bio too. And maybe not even just directed at Jake Bates, just say like general alarmist, rather than hater.
Sure.
But it does strike me that is interesting. We don't, as you said, we don't really think about developing kickers because it's like you need one, right? You're not carrying 2 kickers on your team, but to your point about Brad Holmes saying bringing a veteran kicker to bring it on the practice squad, just so you have somebody here in Detroit ready to call in case Jake Bates's wiring becomes unwired. Because I think that's the thing is you think he's wired right until the games really matter, right? What happens, if the guy misses a kick? Hopefully it's all smooth sailing, but there is the what ifs that maybe sit in the back of your head with the kicker position, but this is their guy, Jeremy. They wrote it out, right? There was nobody else in the preseason after the Badgley stuff happened, and it was just we're throwing all of our weight behind Jake Bates, and maybe that was the psychological, not game that they were playing, but the psychological,
like test.
hey, yeah, it's like you're our guy.
Yeah,
we believe in you, and I think for the most part, in the things that I've seen, right, they're with it and they're rolling with it, and there's nothing that can really happen between now and game one.
I will say it was really interesting to hear Holmes's decision explanation for his decision not to add competition, because if you remember, they brought in like 5 kickers right after he had that like really bad scrimmage.
Yeah, all for tryouts, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think it was after the bad scrimmage, but it was also obviously after the Badgley injury. And Holmes said, like, we were just like, we thought about it. We didn't really love the options on the table, but we were also just kind of like, let's get this kid reps. Let's let this guy develop in front of us. And he said it was maybe the smartest thing they could have done in that situation based on in hindsight. And so he thinks there's been development there. And by God, I hope he's right.
Yeah. It kind of, it's different because it's the quarterback position and a little bit more high stakes with the backup quarterback, or maybe not if you want to make the argument of your starting kicker.
Sure.
But it was the same thing with Hendon Hooker, right? They're like, the more reps he got, the better he got, right?
And I've never viewed the kicker position like that, and so maybe I just got to retrain my brain a little bit here.
There you go. But it's a 53-man or 52-man roster.
It's one or the other. It's at any point.
Yeah.
All right. We've done it. We've wrapped up the 53-man roster. Now it's just time to talk football, matchups, all that sort of stuff, and we're going to have all that for you. We're going to have a big show season preview coming. I think we're going to record on Monday, on Labor Day, so it'll be out on Tuesday. We'll have a midweek mailbag that week. We'll have a first bite as part of Pride of Detroit Direct, so make sure you subscribe to that so you don't miss all of that. Then we're just into the regular season schedule and getting into all the nitty-gritty stuff, and it's going to be a heck of a time. But for Ryan, I'm Jeremy. Thank you all for listening. It's Cass. Be kind.
Recording stopped.
All right. Let's hang out with our live audience. I don't know if you saw. I'm sweating.
Yeah, you are sweating. I noticed it right there where you're talking about Jake Bates, and I was like, "Is that what?
Am I really sweating that much?
Is that what happens when you talk about Jake Bates?" Because I didn't notice it beforehand.
Jake Bates is making me sweat.
I can probably stick around for like 10.
Okay, we'll make it quick.
I'm gonna get home. But what's up, chat?
I don't have YouTube up. I'm sorry, YouTube. This was all thrown hastily together. Someone was asking Antoine Green's situation, and I think last I've seen, they waived him with an injury and then he reverted to the IR. I don't believe they ever came to an injury settlement with him yet. So as of now, his season is over, but because it was a concussion and a neck injury, I think that causes complications when you're trying to come up with an injury settlement, because if it's a grade 1 sprain or whatever, like the book is pretty much written on how long that recovery time takes. A concussion is a lot different. You don't know how long that takes, and so they're probably still evaluating him and seeing where he's at, and I think at some point they probably give him an injury settlement, but I don't believe he's had one yet, and so that's just kind of something to keep an eye out if the Lions throw that transaction out there. Maybe it's like an extremely serious one. I mean, we all saw the hit. It was pretty brutal. And maybe it's just one of those situations like Ty Williams? What was his name?
Yeah, Tyrell Williams.
Tyrell Williams.
Yeah.
Like, he lost his whole season and essentially the rest of his career. I don't think he ever landed anywhere else.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Never mind. So Jamich pulls out a part of the CBA that I'm unaware of, which he says, an injury settlement has to be done within 5 days of not being claimed. So I guess then he's done for the season.
Oh, yeah. Lo and behold, look at that.
Yeah.
I mean, even to your point about not knowing, how long concussions are going to last, or that's why Jake Fromm is on the practice squad, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll answer some questions here, and then I'll get to all the alerts after Ryan goes so that we don't waste his 10 minutes here.
Can we answer AZ Lions fan question? Any concern about what Davenport is going to do for us?
I mean, the same concern you had when they signed him, right? Which is just his health. But I will say
the greatest ability, man.
He's looked good in camp, man, and I think he brings exactly what they want, which is he is so violent out there. Like, he's got the athleticism, but his play style is so dang physical, where he is just like, he's destroying left tackles, and not in a way that like he's leaving them in the dust, but he's just like, he's so unafraid of contact. And I think maybe look at his injury history, and maybe that's why, is like he is just so relentless in collisions that eventually you're going to get injured doing stuff like that. But that's what the Lions want out of that kind of closed end position opposite Aiden, right? Is a guy who sets the edge, a guy who's going to collapse the pocket and make sure that there's no escape hatch on the left side of the offensive line so that Aiden can wrap that dude up.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Because the other thing too about him, and you mentioned the ability to set the edge in the run defense, is like the length, right? In terms of the arms, like he's got longer arms than Aiden, which is a guy, right, that can keep he can keep offensive linemen off him, right, or keep him at a distance so he can make a play.
Yep.
And I mean, he's a guy who, I'm looking at the RAS score. I remember, this was the draft where we were all gathered together in the was it a Holiday? Was it a Holiday Inn conference room?
It's some hotel conference room. I don't remember.
So some hotel conference room in Dearborn, and we were live streaming the draft. It was the Frank Ragnow one, but it was when the Saints, they moved all the way up for a guy from UTSA, and I just remember, looking at his RAS. I mean, a guy who is incredibly big. I mean, you're 6'5", 265. That's a big guy. And they love those players. If he can stay healthy, I think that there's enough tape that says if this guy can stay on the field, he's a difference maker.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited. And I think the thing that's even more exciting is that the Lions, I don't know if I can say that they have quality depth behind them, but they have guys that I'm at least intrigued to see more of, right? Like, it's not retreads, and I'm not trying to quote unquote, like, bury John Kaminsky by any means, but like, I've seen what John Kaminsky does. Like, it's not necessarily exciting to see,
right?
It's like, but like Josh Pascal, it's like, I'm interested to see more. And clearly the Lions are interested to see more when he's playing all the way into the fourth quarter of preseason games. There's intrigue there. And I know you feel really good about the defensive line, though.
Surprisingly so.
Yeah.
I got fooled by it last year, and I think I went into this year being like, all right, you're gonna learn your lesson. Like, you're not gonna get hyped on guys that are unproven. You're not.
Yeah.
It's just like, and then I came out into training camp, and Aleem looked like the beast. Levi looked like a freaking beast. I'm pretty optimistic about Davenport. Haven't even seen DJ Reader out there, and Aiden is as reliable as they come. Is the depth there a little bit concerning? Like, yeah, if Aiden goes down, you don't have your ace in the hole. If Aleem goes down, who takes his spot? Who has the versatility and explosiveness that he does?
Tyson Alualu.
But those starters, I think, can be a really, really darn good starting group. And yeah, as Matt puts in the chat there, like, you got a defensive line coach who is considered elite by a lot. And I think that has already had a lot to do with some of my optimism. And I think maybe that should carry some of the optimism in case the injury bug does hit them a little bit.
Yeah. And, bad builds, you got a point. Jeremy has been fooled by the defensive line ever since they signed Trey Flowers.
How dare you?
I really want to go back and find the article where it was the
No.
first. I think it was the second year of Matt Patricia where it was like, all right, yeah, we're feeling good about we're feeling much better about the defense, and it wasn't just you. We had all talked ourselves into, I mean, Devon Kennard was a darn good player.
Deshaun Hand was supposed to be great. Deshaun Hand is technically still in the NFL, so.
So what do you mean fooled?
Exactly.
Yeah. Ryan, can I answer Ryan's question real quick? Because is this a Malik Willis emergency podcast? Because he's officially part of the NFC North now. I asked you a question. Is this a Malik Willis emergency podcast?
I
is
thought,
that why we're?
I don't know, man. I've had a couple wellness checks on you. You seem okay.
I'm all right. Just why? Why does it have to be the NFC North? And not only just the NFC North. He could have went to the Vikings, and I would have been like, oh, that's annoying. But like, he went to Green Bay.
They don't play Green Bay week 18, do they? No. They play the Vikings.
Yeah. Which, yeah, go to the Vikings so I can see you in week 18, Malik Willis. Like he had a role in the decision, right? He was traded.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just saying it's interesting nonetheless that the Packers, because who is their, I can't remember who are the guys that were behind him. I don't know. Yeah.
They cut him.
Sean Clifford, was he in the mix? I don't know. But just dumb. Like
now it's almost like how the 49ers when they whiffed on Trey Lance, they had Jimmy Garoppolo fall into their lap. So now if the Packers whiff on Jordan Love, they've got their wait, did I say Jimmy Garoppolo? I did not mean to say Jimmy Garoppolo. I meant to say what's the guy's name that they're starting now?
Minshew?
No, the 49ers.
Oh, the 49ers. Brock Purdy.
Brock Purdy. They had Brock Purdy fall in their lap.
Yeah.
Now the Packers have their Brock Purdy in case their Trey Lance doesn't work out.
Right. Yeah. Totally. But remember the conversation last year around the 49ers? Sam Darnold is looking pretty good. Might take Brock Purdy's job. And now he's starting for the Vikings.
Yeah, now we're going to find out if that would have happened. I mean, if he can't succeed in that offense with, I think, one of the best offensive-minded coaches, certainly one of the best receiving corps in the NFL, an okay offensive line, but not a terrible one.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good running back.
By some people's standards. Are you talking about Ty Chandler?
I am not. He is going to be missing his tight end. I believe Hawkinson stayed on PUP, right? I think he did. The first 4 games.
Yeah, he did stay on PUP. Yep. But yeah, what about? I mean, maybe the thing that we're not talking about is Jordan Love's job at risk? Is Jordan Love on the hot seat? I wish he wouldn't have signed a contract extension because then maybe I could push that narrative. It's like what the Lions did when they drafted Hendon Hooker. It's like, yeah, we had a really good season out of golf, but we just want to see it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Missed opportunity.
Stupid Packers.
I want to go back to the defensive line because there are 2 good questions in the chat here.
Yeah.
Dan Pass asked, will James Houston take Davenport's reps on obvious passing downs? Some of them, I would say, yeah. I do think Davenport has a little bit of versatility inside, so I wouldn't be surprised if they slide him inside a little bit. But at the same time, they probably want Levi doing that too, or Pascal maybe not Pascal.
What about even Hutchinson kicking inside and Davenport?
They're not afraid to do that.
Next to him.
100%. They can be creative because I think a lot of those guys can be in on third down. The other defensive line question, I'm gonna go find it. Where did it go? Dang it! Is it further up? Oh, there it is. From Krolik. Who do you think plays more versus the Rams, Davenport or Levi? That's an interesting question. I would say Levi is. It kind of just bleeds into what we were just saying. I think Levi is a little bit more of like the 3-down guy where, well, not necessarily. Like Davenport to me is, it depends on like what their base formation is going to be. And given that you're playing the Rams, they're going to be in 11 personnel, spreading them wide. So you might have to be a nickel a whole bunch, which means you're going to have your 4-man front. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do like 4-2, essentially. And that lends itself to having, I would say, Davenport out there more often, because you'll probably have Davenport, Aleem, your nose tackle, and Aiden as your base guys in general.
Mm-hmm.
You might take a nose out there to have Levi in there instead, but I think in general, the Rams like to run the ball too, and so
yeah,
they're probably going to want to keep their nose in there a bunch. So I'd say Davenport. That's my answer to that question.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it all comes back full circle to talking about what we said with the defensive backs. It's like, well, we didn't see any Levi in the preseason. We didn't see any Marcus Davenport in the preseason. So where will those guys rep? Levi, with even the background that, coming out of college, he played nose tackle for Washington. Not saying he's going to play nose tackle in the NFL, but I think when the Rams do get wide and they do get a little bit light up front, and I think also something to take into consideration is like how healthy is the Rams offensive line going to be? Maybe the Lions see an opportunity to exploit some matchup advantages there, but it's I don't know, it's exciting. When's real football?
We're talking about matchups already, man.
I know. Oh boy. I bet you guys can't wait to see who we bring on for first bite for the Rams.
You say that like we've decided.
No, we haven't decided, but I'm also saying, the last person we had to talk about.
Oh, was he? Did people not like that guest? I don't even remember.
That would be an understatement, because he kind of got into it with like everybody on Lions Twitter.
Right. On game day, he was like yelling at guys. Nah.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions! How about that?
I know the person that we need to reach out to.
Kelly?
No, not Kelly Stafford. Someone we've had on the podcast.
She's gonna be in town. She's doing her podcast.
She's recording her podcast. She's doing
Cleat Chasers.
She can't hurt us anymore. We don't have to pay her any attention. Yeah, we'll invite the kids and yell at them.
Gosh. It would be absolutely awesome dynamite if we shoot for the moon, and you know who I mean.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We've had it before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I probably should have reached out by now, but Jesus Christ, I'm sweating so much. I'm self-conscious now with how much I'm sweating. I don't sweat this much.
We should definitely have that person on if available, because just the maybe the tough conversations that she's had to deal with Sean McVay. Oh God,
that clip of him.
Not endearing.
On what I thought to be a very, very fair question. Like, I'm almost certain. I am certain. Brad Holmes was asked a almost exact question when they traded T.J. Hawkinson. Like, you say it makes the team better. Explain.
What does that mean? Yeah.
And that's a fair question.
Oh, it was pushback, and then I even thought the way that, when McVay was kind of like looking for, clarity on what they meant, and they were like, well, like the short term, long term, he's like, all of it. And it's like, okay. Like, I don't know. Kyron Williams, though, you see that? Returning punts?
That's fun.
It's a good way to get your starting running back hurt.
Yeah. And then he kind of snapped at Jordan, too, after that, right? Like, they're still. I don't know why they're doing Zoom press conferences. But like, she just took a little minute to unmute herself or realize it was her turn, and he's like, "Yeah, let's get this thing going."
Yeah, let's get this over with.
Bro, chill.
Okay, chill.
I mean, if we're talking, if we want to talk about like coaches' relationships, I'm surprised we didn't talk about this on Sunday. Coaches' relationships with the media. Deion Sanders.
Not great. Is that the easiest? Is that the nicest way to put it?
I have some thoughts.
By the way, I've seen some of it, but it was like weeks ago.
Well, yeah, and
like that, like wasn't it like I'm
didn't-
not answering questions from CBS and it has nothing to do with you, but it's because you work for CBS?
No,
that was the last like Deion Sanders thing I saw.
He has banned a reporter from asking questions at a press conference now, because I should say columnist. He's a columnist, not reporter. He has access to everything. He just is not allowed to. He's no longer allowed to ask questions at Deion Sanders press conferences because, like, I don't know. He does like the columnist thing where he's like, you know, like he comes up with these little nicknames for him and just like, he's. I wish I had one of the very not so creative things, but like they're kind of insulting, right? Like they're just like, oh, the almighty, very sarcastically, the almighty Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
And my take is I don't like those kind of columnists. I think it's a little immature. I think you can do better, but also kind of like freedom of the press here. Like, deal with it. There are going to be people who are weird jerks about it.
Oh, it was a statement from their athletic department.
Yeah, like this was an official thing that they did. And I don't, like I said, I don't particularly like that kind of writing if you want to call it journalism.
I have some of the names here.
Okay, let me read off some of the names.
Deposition Deion.
There you go. Alliterative.
The Bruce Lee of BS.
Yep.
And quote, a false prophet, and his use of phrases such as quote, Planet Prime, the Deion Kool-Aid, and circus. The ban is indefinite.
So yeah, I don't love that sort of stuff. But here's the thing. No, like you can't. That's not going to make it go away, right? If you're so bothered,
it makes it worse.
Yeah, it's going to make it a lot worse. And I don't know. I just don't think like trying to cut his access in some sort of way is a proper solution to. If your goal is to let's elevate the conversation above these weird random insults, this is not a solution.
No, not a solution. It's only going to make things harder.
Sounds like the reporter was a general Deion alarmist. What do you mean by that?
The Chargers made a trade.
Yeah, right now? What happened?
The Chargers announced they have officially acquired quarterback Taylor Heineke from the Atlanta Falcons in exchange for a 7th-round pick.
Taylor Heineke still garnering draft picks as a trade?
That's rewind ourselves back to preseason week 1. The rain settles in East Rutherford, and everybody's like, "Oh man, let's get Taylor Heineke."
I don't even remember him playing. I thought he was still in Washington.
Remember, he had a really bad. Well, because the whole thing was the ESPN article, right? Where it's like trades that make like too much sense or whatever. Like, I forget however the article is worded.
That's the thing that drove me crazy the most. Like the amount of people who thought the Lions needed to add a quarterback. Like I understand you didn't like Nate Sudfeld. That's fine, but we all knew it was either going to be Nate Sudfeld or it was going to be Hendon Hooker as a starter. There was not a third competitor that was going to enter that race. And this was the ideal outcome, right? Hendon Hooker is your guy, and who gives a crap as your QB3 is, to be quite honest. Because
there's no room for a quarterback 3 on a Super Bowl roster.
No. And if somehow the top 2 go down, I don't think Jake Fromm is coming into the game. I think they sign a veteran quarterback or trade for someone or whatever.
I'm just having images from Batman Returns, but instead of Michael Keaton answering the bat signal, it's Teddy Bridgewater.
Just drops everything he's doing with his 2-0 high school football team.
Yeah. Oh man, wouldn't that be great? Yeah, and I say Super Bowl teams, right? Because or teams that are interested in competing for the Super Bowl, because did anybody see that the Cleveland Browns kept 4 quarterbacks on their active roster?
That's insane.
4
They've got to cut
quarterbacks.
someone eventually, right? Are they doing roster gymnastics?
They're waiting for Deshaun Watson's shoulder to fall off so that they can put him on IR.
And pay him for the entire season for being on IR?
They're in so much trouble. But they made the playoffs last year. I don't get it.
They're
really
still
don't get it.
They have a talented roster. They just
Incredibly talented. They have Myles Garrett. They have Jim Schwartz, who might be, I don't know, if he's not the best defensive coordinator in football, he's up there.
Chat.
Did they? Who?
Ty? Who's Ty?
Huntley? They cut Ty Huntley?
Hmm.
Oh, boy. Why would you cut Ty Huntley? I would keep Ty Huntley over Jameis Winston.
Who's the other one? Who's 4?
Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Oh, that's right.
I feel like
the fact that you knew all 4 quarterbacks on the Browns depth chart.
What does that mean?
Concerns me.
Is it concerning? I'm just a big Deshaun Watson hater. Not an alarmist. I'm a hater.
Yeah. You don't need to sugarcoat it.
Yeah. I mean, and it's easy to hate Deshaun Watson, right? But I kind of like, of course, I don't like Deshaun Watson for reasons that are obvious, but also I don't like it because it stonewalled Lamar Jackson for a while. And I felt like Lamar Jackson got punished because the Browns are stupid. And they moved heaven and earth and gave Deshaun Watson all that money. And then...
Sorry, I'm reading some very inappropriate chats on YouTube.
Oh, fantastic. Of course. But I don't know. It's just so funny. Like, just recounting all of that to me, we can get onto a new topic, but I just want to say it's so funny to me that you have the Atlanta Falcons on their team website say that they're not interested in Lamar Jackson, and then fast forward a year, they sign Kirk Cousins and draft Michael Penix in the first round. Shut up. You are not serious people. You are not serious people.
Well, it's crazy to me because like they tweeted it out. Was it like a story, a statement? I feel
it was a story on their team website.
That doesn't happen.
No,
it's not like that was an answer to a press conference. That was just them putting out a statement that we're not interested in this guy. That doesn't happen ever.
No. It was spurned. It was brought on by the fact that the deadline had passed for Lamar Jackson, and he was now eligible to receive offer sheets. And it was the thing is that it was prepared.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote that ahead of time. I love it. The Atlanta Falcons, they deserve everything they get.
Someone tipped me off to look at Jordan Rodriguez's latest tweet, and I was not expecting this. Hold on to your butts here.
I'm okay.
The Rams have gotten a long look at Jonah Jackson at center in his return to action. Sean McVay says they're leaning towards Jackson at center and Steve Avila at left guard to try to get the best combo on the field that they can for the opener.
Huh? Now they're doing this?
That's wild.
Well, because they moved Avila to center, right? Like that was the plan.
I don't quite understand. Yeah, who are they moving to the bench that? Like if the idea is like get your best 5 out there, who was at center? Avila was at center.
Because he went from guard to center.
So then you're just switching spots. That's not putting your best guys out there. That's just switching. What? What?
What? They're going to change their name to the LA Shambles.
That's wild.
Yeah, that is really.
I can't speak
really
to whether Jonah can play center, but that's not an easy transition. I know a lot of people are like, it's an interior, it's fine. That requires, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
The interior offensive line, it's interesting.
It's interesting. It's been well over 10 minutes, you liar, first of all.
It is. Well, you know what? You say some things that get me all ramped up. Like
I have so many alerts to get to that I've been holding off. I got to scroll like 3 pages down here. How do we have an alert from 3 hours ago? We weren't even live. RGA, are you here? Why did you are here. Why did you subscribe 3 hours ago? But thank you for the 22 months. I'm just going to go through them now while you look at whatever you're staring at intently. Space Catas 31 months. Thank you for that. And says, yay, subs. State Nate 44 months. Subscribe to the channel. Lions Blood 37 months. Summer Guy 23 months. Thanks, Summer Guy. Look what you're doing. Roman a Day 6 months. Subscribe to the channel. Arnick 41 months says, I feel like we heard a lot about the second and third string guys this offseason, but what about the stars? Is Amon-Ra going to catch 150 passes? What's realistic expectations for J-Mo? Will Hutch get 15 sacks with the revamped defensive line? How's Jack Campbell? I will say, Ryan and I recorded a first bite, an extra first bite, coming to subscribers only early next week with a special guest that answers some of those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Amon-Ra catching 150 passes. I love the man. That's an NFL record.
Yeah.
No
also,
one has ever done that.
It feels like overuse.
Yeah, like he caught a ton of passes last year, and it was like what 119 or something.
Yeah. Which again was a lot, and also he didn't miss any games, did he? But he did get hurt in the Seahawks game.
He missed one game.
Did he miss one game?
He missed one game. Yeah.
What?
It was after. So he had the short week for Green Bay, and then he missed the one after that.
Yeah. Yep.
He was injured in the Packers game, but as he said on Netflix, you don't miss Packers week or whatever it was.
Yeah. Was that the Panthers game? Yeah, it was the Panthers game that he missed because Gibbs. I think Gibbs sat that game. I think if I'm remembering
treated like
correctly.
a preseason game, like let's rest our starters.
Kinda, yeah.
They won 20-6, I think. I don't know why.
Well, that was remember when they pulled out the old okey doke, not flea flicker play to Sam Laporta.
Yeah, the same week that the Chiefs ran like the exact same play.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Everybody. Yeah.
That one wasn't a flea flicker either. Grandpa QB, thank you for the 10 months, says, who has ever come back from an Achilles and been successful on field? It's a great question. I don't have a list by me. It's certainly not extremely common. So skepticism is certainly warranted for Tim Patrick, which I assume that question is about. But apparently he played pretty well in the preseason. Obviously not enough to win a starting job, but at the same time, as our conversation with the Broncos was
Tim Lynch
from Mile High. It was partially because of Josh Reynolds, who has that role, but it was mainly because they have a late round rookie.
Yeah, 7th rounder, yeah.
Like a 6'5" guy who balled the heck out. And if you're the Broncos, a team that's kind of rebuilding, are you going to keep the rookie on a rookie contract that's balling out in camp, or are you going to keep the guy coming off 2 major injuries and is 30 years old?
Yeah. Devon Vele?
Yeah. It's a classic example of two franchises just being in a different place and prioritizing different things. J Rago, thank you for the 3 months. Subscribe to the channel. Amnam 20 months says we are back. J Russ 10-bit says it's Antoine Green off the team for good this year, or is there a path for him to come back? As we just discussed 30 minutes ago, hopefully you were there, J Russ, but if you're not, we learned that he was waived injured, which if he clears waivers, he comes back to the IR, and then the team has 5 days to then come to an injury settlement with him, and if they don't, he stays on IR for the rest of the year. They did not, as far as I have seen, so he's done for the year. Kick Puncher, thank you for the 10 months, says win the Super Bowl, which I think it's in quotes because I believe that is a reference to Brad Holmes' press conference today, where someone, I don't remember who it was, I think maybe Burkett was just like, okay, what are your expectations for the season? Win the Super Bowl. End of statement. Very simple. Nick the Greek 100-bit says, well, you got something?
Well, we're just doing commas as far as grammar goes in class, and one of my slides had an example sentence that said the Detroit Lions, comma, the underdogs, comma, shocked everyone when they won the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
I made that slideshow in 2018 where like, yeah, that would shock everybody. But
back in 2018, it certainly would have.
As one of my students, like they raised their hand, they're like, that wouldn't be so shocking anymore. And I was like, you're right. This is an old presentation.
Just add the word didn't. But I'm just saying.
Oh, didn't shock everyone. Okay.
Gotcha. I was actually thinking the sad way.
Oh, didn't win the Super Bowl.
Didn't win the Super Bowl, but that's a shock.
That is a shock.
Right.
Or it didn't shock everyone that they won the Super Bowl. I'd have to get rid of the word underdogs, though, because that wouldn't make any sense.
True. Nick the 100-bit says the wet blanket does not approve of Kickmaster Bates. Trying to keep an open mind.
Jeremy Reisman, general alarmist.
Ron Jeev Roy over on YouTube says, you use Lions references in your instruction. That's actually hilarious.
It's actually 2 of them, because there's another one for introductory clauses and phrases, commas, and it's when Barry Sanders decided to retire, comma, he made the decision abruptly, which is kind of sad. But
that is very sad.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know what? Modernize it. Just put Calvin Johnson in there.
Yeah, because there's probably a lot of people, who's Barry Sanders?
A quarter, 23 months says Lions season begins. So ready for football. You and me both. RC Vader 27 months says triplets. Let's go. Good math. 9 times 3, 27. 21 Kizzle, 6 months says let's go. Nick the Greek 100-bit says Snacks Harrison basically did a strong arm robbery of Bob Quinn. He was so good for the back half of that season when they did the midseason trade.
Oh,
and we all went into the next season like, oh man, their run defense is gonna be so good.
Remember when they went to Miami and just spanked?
I was there. I was in the crowd.
Spanked their booties, and then
moved to 500 in that game. I think they went to 4-4 that game, and then it was just like.
And then they played Seattle the following week in Detroit.
They got their crap kicked out of them,
and then they traded Golden Tate.
And then they trade Golden Tate.
What is going on?
What a ride that was.
No wonder.
Anyone miss those days even a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, just talking through that scenario out loud, it makes sense why he got a red rubber nose put on his face in a music video.
Wow, Jace Billingsley getting a couple shout outs here. That was yesterday. No one's seen that yet.
That was yesterday. No, nobody saw that.
That might have not even been during the part where you were
It
recording.
was not. No, it was not.
So you're referencing something no one has seen. Or I am, I guess. You weren't necessarily referencing it. Anyways, Nick the Great, another 100-bit says, Kirby Joseph is going to explode Jordan Love's knee and Malik Willis will break out like Geno Smith. Yeah. You know, in 3 or 4 months, we're gonna see Malik Willis saying, hey, they wrote me off, but I didn't write back.
Just the dumbest attempt at a mic drop ever. I hate it. Doesn't even make any sense.
J. Russ 5-bit says, Ryan, Malik Willis or Hendon Hooker as Lions QB2?
Jeremy's the one who proposed a trade. I'm gonna put him on right now. Jeremy said Malik Willis for Hendon Hooker. Who says no?
I didn't propose that.
Oh, I did propose it, but you said no, and I said, but it makes sense. Hendon Hooker going back to Tennessee. Hashtag coming home.
That's right.
Allen Robinson, hashtag coming home. Donovan Peoples-Jones, hashtag coming home.
You can't. No, he's already been home. They can't come home.
Trevor Nowoski, hashtag coming home.
Sorry, stop it. 100 bits from Nick the Greek says, isn't Deion Sanders upset because someone found out he owned a sweatshop in Malaysia? He said he was being punished for giving children, quote, opportunities. To be clear, that was what Nick the Greek wrote. That is not based in any truth. Let's not.
Yeah.
This is why we don't read your things, Nick the Greek, is because you make me say things that could get me in trouble.
We got to stay away from deposition Deion.
That's right. Speaking of which, Nick the Greek with 18-bit says, when I take someone's deposition, they see the face of God. And 100 more bits from Nick the Greek says, and Kirby Joseph needs to somehow explode McVay's knee. Do you hear my dog right now?
No.
He's snore whining. Okay, I am caught up. There was a $3 donation in there, but for some reason it's not showing up on my activity feed. But thank you for the $3. I wish I could remember who did it, and I don't think I can scroll up anywhere and find it.
No, man, there's a great question from Dank Ample. Read that out loud.
First of all, I feel like I've never read that name out loud. It's great.
Yeah.
Dank Ample. Dan
Yeah.
Campbell.
There you go. Okay, I didn't even put that together.
Yeah. That's a great name. Shout out. That should be. Sorry, he's running in his sleep, and it's very cute. If the Lions and Packers meet in the playoffs and Malik Willis leads a touchdown drive, Jared Goff comes back with a touchdown drive, and Bates makes an extra point to lose by 1, which one of you will be more smug? I'm not gonna be smug. I'd be pissed. I'd be beyond pissed. Now, okay, maybe a little smug. Maybe I'd be like, I told you. But I think my overwhelming emotion would be anger and sadness.
What if we change it from extra point to on the ensuing kickoff after the Jared Goff touchdown, he lands it short of the 20 and the Packers get to come out to the 40 and Malik Willis throws a Hail Mary touchdown.
Oh God. Why are we coming up with these scenarios right now? This is nightmarish.
It is. It truly is.
I don't like this. All right. I think it's time to get out of here. I'm going to jump on the radio with Risden in 20 minutes here. So,
he remembers you.
Okay. If you're on the west side and you have access to, I always forget the radio numbers of that. Check in on that.
You can listen to it online too.
True.
Yeah. And it's just radio. So are you going to change your shirt or no?
I don't think so. You know what? I probably am because this is just.
Dude, I've never seen you sweat. Is that
I
hot?
literally don't sweat that much, but the AC isn't on, and I got these hot ass lights in front of me. So, plus the great shirt, you know.
It's only one bit.
Am I just like leaning over here? It's very weird.
Did you just get back from the U.S. Open?
Maybe.
Like, what do you?
You know what? I think maybe it is. I think back in the day when I did the wax your armpits.
No, stop.
I think it was this arm, and I ripped out all of the sweat glands. Is that a thing? I don't know.
That's insane.
You know what? The more I think about it, I think it was maybe even this one. It wasn't even this one. I don't know. Either way, we're getting out of here. If you missed any of this, it's going up on the podcast feed tomorrow, or you can just rewatch the replays here on Twitch or YouTube. This is not one of the ones that are going up on the newsletter, so it is available on VOD on either side. So thanks y'all for joining us. We'll see you guys Monday night next time for our season preview. You guys have a great holiday weekend. Stay safe.